So Apple have wrapped up their WWDC keynote event. They've announced a lot of new things, a lot of which I think we were all expecting, but there were also quite a lot of surprises as well. And in this video, I wanted to cover some of the biggest news that I found the most interesting. Timestamps will be in the description down below. Let's get into it. So starting off, we got a couple of Vision Pro updates, nothing crazy. Probably the biggest feature we got is the ability to resize the Mac's virtual display. So you can now have an ultra-wide monitor experience directly within the Apple Vision Pro. So RIP to all of the ultra-wide monitors out there. It's definitely a nice productivity feature, but equally I feel like the Vision Pro is so niche that it's not really going to affect that many customers just yet. But Apple have said that they're going to be rolling out the Vision Pro to other countries outside of the US over the next month. And here in the UK, we'll be able to grab our hands on one on July the 12th. And I most likely will be purchasing a Vision Pro just to test out and review. So make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss that video.
Do it.
The next announcement we got was iOS 18. And I'd say that Apple did most of what we were expecting them to do, especially when it comes to customization. So for starters, you can now arrange app icons wherever you want on the home screen grid. By the looks of it, it doesn't look like it's complete unregulated Android level of customization. The apps still do have to fit within the basic grid layout, but you can now have gaps in the screen. So you could theoretically have all of your apps at the bottom of the screen for easier reach. The app icons will also change when you're in dark mode, and you can even set the colors of the icons to get your own sort of custom theme. Again, it doesn't look like you can customize the color of each app individually. It looks more like a theme that is set across your entire device. And I'm looking at some of the custom home screen demos that Apple showed off in their keynote, and I'll be honest, they look quite ugly. Yeah, I mean, this just looks like a pretty easy way to just go out and ruin the look of your home screen. But hey, you don't have to customize your home screen if you don't want to. And it is sort of nice that people who want to make their phones a bit more personal now have the option to do so. I think for me though, the more impressive update was with Control Center. So Apple have redesigned the Control Center to give the buttons a more rounded look. I guess they're sort of going with that Apple Vision Pro theme, which is definitely interesting because I feel like with a smartphone or a tablet, square and rectangular elements are just a lot more easier and nicer to interact with compared to circular ones. So it will be interesting to see what the actual user experience is like on the beta. But yeah, there are also multiple pages within Control Center that you can swipe vertically between, and you can even add different controls directly within the interface without having to go into the settings app. And you can resize widgets from within Control Center. Finally, we're also able to change the flashlight and camera buttons on the lock screen and map them to other functions like Shazam, creating quick notes, and even opening up specific apps like Snapchat. I can definitely see this being a popular feature, especially when it comes to replacing that camera button, because you can already swipe left to open the camera as it is. So I felt like the camera button on the home screen was always just a bit redundant. So this is definitely a very welcome customization. However, the biggest upgrade for me personally in iOS 18 is the ability to finally lock your apps using Face ID. So now you could have something like your Files app locked so that anytime somebody is using your phone, they can't just have access to all of your important files. After that, we got a bunch of various updates across different apps. So in messages, you can now react to messages using emojis. We can finally send scheduled texts and format them using bold, italics, or underlines. And there's finally RCS support, which should improve the messaging experience that you get with your Green Bubble Android friends. And yeah, we've also got some redesigns to the Mail app with different sections for different email categories, and the Photos app as well, where you can now filter out screenshots. So, if you've got a bunch of memes scattered throughout your phone and you want to quickly hide them whilst you're browsing through your memories, you can now do that. And a big update, which they sort of just glossed over, but you can now also view reminders directly within the calendar app and tick them off in there. So those were some of the main changes within iOS 18, and it will be supported on iPhones as far back as the iPhone XR from 6 years ago. The AirPods also got some small updates as well, with background sound removal when you're on calls, and the ability to nod your head to decline a call. And WatchOS also got a few new health features, which I won't go into too much detail. And then we got iPadOS 18, which gets all of the new features that iOS 18 gets, plus a few design changes throughout the OS when it comes to tab bars. But probably the biggest announcement that made everyone scream was the fact that we finally got a calculator app on the iPad after 13 years.
Wow.
13 years it's been where we've not had an actual dedicated built-in native calculator app on the iPad. And yeah, on the surface, the calculator app just looks like a blown up version of the iPhone app. However, Apple have taken it a step further by including a new feature called Math Notes, which lets you use the Apple Pencil to perform calculations really quickly. So essentially, the iPad is able to read your handwriting, detect that you're performing a calculation, and then solve that calculation in real time. And then if you later decide to edit your working, everything else will adjust to reflect that. You can even create variables and then use those variables to plot actual graphs for them. So RIP to apps like Desmos. And some of these calculations are actually pretty advanced and impressive. And they also work inside the standard Apple Notes app too. But yeah, the thing I'm more interested to see is whether or not the calculator app has a widget. Because, if it's taken Apple 13 years to bring the calculator app to the iPad, it better have an interactive widget that I can place on my home screen. It better resize fully with Stage Manager, or else I'm going to be very unhappy. Otherwise, I felt that iPadOS was quite a disappointing upgrade. I was really hoping that they'd bring over some new software features to take advantage of the new M4 chip inside of the new iPad Pros, or that they'd redesign Control Center to take advantage of the extra screen real estate that the iPad has, or even just bring over the Journal app, because the journaling app got some pretty big upgrades in iOS 18 with a new calendar view and the ability to search through journal entries. But yeah, we didn't get any of that, which was quite disappointing. Thankfully though, macOS got some pretty impressive upgrades. So they're calling it macOS Sequoia, I think is how you pronounce it. And the first big feature they unveiled was iPhone mirroring. So you can now view and control your iPhone directly from your Mac. Funnily enough, this is a feature that Samsung's ecosystem has had for quite a while now, and I think it even works across their tablets too. And yeah, I don't know how I feel about this feature, because usually whenever I'm getting any sort of deep work done on my Mac, I usually like to keep my iPhone hidden in a separate room so I'm not constantly getting distracted. But now with this feature, I can theoretically just open up Snapchat or Instagram whenever I'm on my Mac and get distracted whilst I'm meant to be getting work done. So yeah, I'm not sure if this is a feature I'm overly excited about. What I am glad they finally introduced though is native window snapping within macOS. This is a feature I've been banging on about for ages now. So RIP to apps like Rectangle and Better Snap, because you can now finally drag windows and snap them to the size of your display. There are keyboard shortcuts as well, which is great because it means that I'm going to have to relearn all of the shortcuts for when I switch over from Rectangle. And yeah, it's just a feature that Windows has had for decades now. So, I'm not even going to praise Apple for doing this. They should have done this years ago. But I am finally glad that it's here on the Mac. Although I will say that from a design perspective, they are leaving a worrying amount of space between the windows in this demo. So I'm hoping that they fix that. We've also got a new passwords app as well. So this was something we were expecting Apple to do. Essentially, they've just taken the password section of the settings app and created a standalone app for it, which is also coming to the iPhone and iPad as well, and Windows too. So yeah, RIP to 1Password and all of the other password managers out there that charge you a subscription. So yeah, overall, I'd say that macOS was a pretty decent upgrade, all things considered. But then we got the big news, and this was really the highlight of the event. The thing that we were expecting Apple to do all along, which was to outline its AI strategy. And I think that they absolutely killed it with some of their new AI announcements. So they're marketing their entire AI experience as Apple Intelligence, which when I heard that, I thought that was such an Apple thing to do. To take an existing term, AI, and then to just recoin it as being Apple Intelligence. And yet they really went all out in terms of integrating the AI deeply across their different operating systems. So some of the actions you can perform are proofreading text and correcting grammar mistakes, so RIP Grammarly. You can also reformat text to suit different writing styles and tones. You can summarize text across different websites, within emails, and within page documents. You can also clean up photos by removing background objects. And you can even transcribe text from voice notes or phone calls and create notes summarizing those calls. I can imagine a lot of students out there will be using this feature to transcribe their lecture notes. And there's also a new Genmoji feature, which lets you use AI to auto-generate custom-made emojis. And I absolutely love this feature. I think it's incredible. I think it's going to be super popular with younger audiences, especially because you can actually create emojis of actual people, which on the one hand is kind of weird because, theoretically somebody could create an emoji of you without your consent, but it's also pretty incredible as well, because oftentimes I'm struggling to come up with new emojis when I'm designing pages inside of Notion. So if I can just get an AI to auto-generate an image for me, I'm all for that. And thanks to Apple Intelligence, Siri is finally getting its biggest upgrade in 13 years. For starters, it should give you more natural responses that are more contextually relevant. So for example, if you're asking Siri to create a reminder and you make a mistake, if you simply correct yourself, Siri will understand that you made a mistake and just ignore the first request. But it can also go a step further by performing actions within apps as well. So for example, you could ask Siri to play a podcast that your friend sent to you 2 weeks ago, or to edit a photo that was emailed to you last month. And Siri will understand the context of those conversations and actually perform the actions inside of the apps for you. You can even ask Siri on how to perform certain functions on your device, like how to schedule a text, and it will auto-generate you a mini iPhone user guide on how to perform that task. So RIP tech YouTubers. And Siri also integrates with ChatGPT. So, there were stories about Apple striking a deal with OpenAI a couple of weeks before WWDC. And now, if you ask Siri some more advanced questions, like asking it to generate some meal ideas, instead of just telling you what it found on the web like before, Siri will now ask you if you want to generate a response using ChatGPT, which I think is going to be a killer feature, especially because you can now type to Siri in addition to using your voice. So yeah, RIP to the ChatGPT app. Now, obviously, when it comes to AI and personal assistants, a lot of people will naturally be concerned about the whole privacy and security side of things. And the way Apple have addressed this is by processing most of the AI tasks on device. So your data never has to leave your phone. And then for some of the more intensive AI tasks that can't be done on device, your iPhone will send the data encrypted to Apple's private cloud computer servers, which are designed to securely process the AI tasks. And then for the ChatGPT stuff, the information is processed by OpenAI, but Apple are supposedly encrypting your requests so that OpenAI can't just build user profiles of you or see any of your personal conversation history. I'm no security expert myself, but this is what Apple are saying. Now, the big catch with all of this is that Apple Intelligence only runs on Apple devices with an M series chip or the A17 Pro chip found in the iPhone 15 Pros. So if you have a regular iPhone 15 or an iPhone 14 Pro from last year, you unfortunately won't get access to any of the AI features by the looks of it. And my guess is that this is because of RAM limitations, because the only common factor between the A17 Pro chip and the M1 chip that I can think of is the fact that they both come with 8 gigabytes of RAM, which I'm imagining is the minimum amount of memory needed to run these on-device AI tasks. But the benefit you do get is that the AI features are completely free on the devices that support them. So there's no subscription like with pretty much every other AI service out there. And this makes sense, to be fair. Apple needs to find some way of monetizing their whole AI strategy, to satisfy their investors. They're not just going to pour in dozens of resources and this amount of time and effort into building these AI models without generating any sort of return off of that. And it looks like their main revenue driver is going to come from people just upgrading their older iPhones to new ones to gain access to those AI experiences, which, to be honest, I think is better than having to pay another subscription. So overall, I think it's safe to say that this is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, WWDC event of all time, at least of the ones that I can remember. And yeah, I cannot wait to start testing out the new betas for this software. I will be doing videos covering the new features in depth once I get my hands on the public beta in July. So if you'd like to see those videos when they first come out, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Consider leaving a like if this video was helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next one.